I supported my family for years and was cruelly betrayed, but I fought and won my life back. I always believed that loving your family meant giving yourself completely, expecting nothing in return. I spent years immersed in bills, invoices, and obligations that to me were just part of the natural care one should have for one's parents. Every small effort seemed normal, every sacrifice necessary. I would get up early, rush to work, then to the banks, pay the bills, and still try to help my younger brother. It was exhausting, but I believed it was my responsibility to ensure everyone had comfort and stability. What I didn't know was that my dedication was being observed in a cruelly selective way. My parents, Lucia and Geraldo, praised my dedication, but behind their smiles, a hidden reality was taking shape. The family inheritance was being planned in such a way that my efforts wouldn't count for anything. I still couldn't grasp the weight of what was hidden, but I felt a strange uneasiness, as if something were out of place. My name is Patricia, and this story began 10 years ago, when I was 28. I worked as a financial administrator at a mid-sized company, balancing my job with caring for my family. Every payment I made seemed small compared to the comfort I provided my parents. I felt proud of myself, believing I was fulfilling my role. I never questioned how much it cost me. But as the years passed, small clues began to become inevitable. Bills I paid, without question, properties I helped maintain, all my efforts seemed to count for nothing. A growing silence formed within me, but I still tried to justify it all as love and duty. The first tensions arose when I began to notice slight differences in how he treated my brother, Vinicius. He didn't get involved in the bills, he didn't take responsibility, but he seemed to have the freedom to spend without restriction. I felt a growing discomfort, but I still tried to rationalize. He's younger. Maybe he needs guidance. With each gesture, my heart sank. And at the same time, I blamed myself for feeling angry, for thinking something was wrong. My mind tried to convince itself that everything was normal, that I was overreacting. Deep down, however, a quiet unease was growing. I began to notice subtle details. Comments about who deserved what, suggestions that my generosity was excessive, ironic praise for my dedication. At every family gathering, I felt like I was treading on minefields. My parents spoke of justice, but their actions said something else. It was confusing, and I still couldn't put my feelings into words. The feeling of being manipulated, little by little, began to set in. And then came the first real shock, the conversation about the inheritance. I listened in disbelief. My parents, in an almost casual tone, said that Vinicius would be the sole heir to the properties and the accumulated savings. My world fell apart. All the effort, all the years of sacrifice, every payment I had made thinking I was helping the family seemed to have been in vain. I was called selfish when I tried to question it, and a silent anger mixed with deep sadness. I felt betrayed, alone, and lost, facing a truth that seemed too cruel to be real. The initial shock gave way to a mixture of disbelief and anger that seemed to corrode every inch of me. I remembered every bill paid, every sacrifice made, and it all seemed ridiculous compared to the cruel reality my parents and brother were imposing on me. I began to question my own perception of justice, to ponder whether my dedication truly had any value. But above all, I felt a profound sadness, a sense of emptiness I couldn't fill. The world I knew, the family stability I'd taken so much pride in maintaining, was crumbling before my eyes. I tried to talk, explaining my dedication and my efforts, but my words met with invisible barriers. My parents reacted coldly, and Vinicius seemed immune to my attempts at dialogue. Every explanation, every plea for recognition, was met with looks of disapproval or contempt. I felt like I was fighting ghosts, ingratitude, manipulation, and above all, the desperation of accepting a truth that hurt me deeply. For weeks, I lived in this state of silent tension, trying to organize my thoughts and emotions, but I felt like a storm about to explode. The feeling of injustice began to turn into self-doubt. Was it truly wrong to want what was rightfully mine? I, who had given so much, was now seen as selfish. Guilt tried to creep into every decision, but something inside me refused to surrender. There was a small but insistent urge to fight, to refuse to accept that years of effort would be completely discarded. It was a constant internal struggle between the pain of betrayal and the need to assert myself, to protect what I knew was right. From that point on, every family interaction became a test of endurance. Lunches and dinners carried silent tension. Every word or gesture could be misinterpreted. I felt like I was living in an emotional prison, trapped between the love I felt and the manipulation that surrounded me. Every step I took had to be calculated, every decision thought over 1,000 times. The weight of carrying years of sacrifice while facing a moral and emotional battle was crushing. It was in this context that I began to realize that the moment of change had to come. I could no longer give in, nor ignore the pain I felt. I realized that my recovery depended not on Vinicius, nor on my parents, but on myself. I then decided to face the situation head-on, to study my legal options, understand my rights, and, most importantly, to establish limits that I had never dared to set. It was the first concrete step toward transformation, a step that combined courage and self-knowledge, and one that would mark the beginning of a new phase in my life. The first step was accepting that I could no longer allow my generosity to be exploited. I began organizing all the documents, contracts, and payment receipts I had made over nearly a decade. Each receipt became a silent weapon, proof of what I had built with my effort and dedication. At the same time, my anxiety grew. Each new detail I discovered about the inheritance distribution seemed more unfair than the last. But there was a flame inside me, small and persistent, that reminded me, this will not define you. You must fight for yourself. Seeking legal help was painful, but necessary. I felt ashamed to expose my family, to admit that I had been deceived for years. But the fear of loss had to be faced. Each consultation, each conversation with lawyers, was a step away from the victim role I felt forced to accept. I discovered that there were alternatives, legal strategies that could finally put my finances and my future in order. Fear mingled with cautious hope. I knew the road would be long and full of confrontations, but for the first time, I felt I had a real chance to change my destiny. The tension at home was rising. Vinicius sensed I was taking control of the situation, and the dispute began to intensify. The days were long and heavy. Every family conversation turned into a battle. I felt the weight of injustice, but also an unprecedented strength, a clarity that allowed me to maintain my focus, even when the pain tried to overwhelm me. I spent sleepless nights reviewing contracts, studying laws, and calculating every risk. With each difficulty, with each veiled threat, I realized I was growing in resilience, that my emotions were strengthening along with my resolve. There were times when I thought about giving up, about resigning and leaving everything behind. The feeling of exhaustion and frustration was overwhelming, but something inside me refused to surrender to injustice. I remembered every effort, every payment made with love and intention to protect my family. The anger I felt became fuel for assertive action. With that, I realized it wasn't just about money or real estate. It was about dignity, about establishing clear boundaries and regaining the respect I had lost for so long. The turning point came when I decided to officially take on one of the mortgages I'd been paying off without realizing it, ensuring that my presence in the house was legally recognized. This move was risky, but necessary. It was the first concrete act of empowerment, which made me feel like I was finally in control of my life. At the same time, I realized that the struggle wouldn't just be financial. It would be emotional, familial, and moral. But there was a new and powerful feeling that I could win, that my efforts would finally be valid, and that my voice, previously ignored, would be heard and respected. The legal battle began, and with it came a new level of stress. Every meeting, every hearing, every document presented seemed to carry the weight of years of injustice. Vinicius tried to destabilize me, my parents, looked on coldly, and I needed to learn to stand firm amidst the storm. It was during this period that I realized the strength I had never recognized within myself. Every small victory, every step forward in legality, was a reminder that I was rebuilding not only my financial security but also my self-esteem. Over the next few months, I felt a gradual transformation. Sleepless nights gave way to a quiet, almost ritualistic determination. I began to make life plans based on my own choices, without relying on family recognition for validation. I needed this emotional space to heal, and I realized that setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was survival and self-respect. With each obstacle, my patience and perseverance grew stronger. For the first time in years, I felt like I was acting for myself, not for others. The process of overcoming grief also involved confronting my own emotions. There were moments of doubt and deep sadness, memories of all the years I felt exploited, and silent tears that only I witnessed. But gradually, these tears became less about pain and more about liberation. I learned to value myself, to recognize my courage, and to understand that strength didn't need to be displayed. It could be silent, constant, and firm, built on truth and justice. Meanwhile, my parents began to confront their own mistakes. Difficult conversations, filled with guilt and remorse, arose frequently. I realized that the truth, however painful, had a purifying effect. While I couldn't erase the hurt, I could see that by taking ownership, I began to create space for more honest dialogue. This process wasn't easy. It required patience, firmness, and the ability to resist the emotional manipulation that had previously held me captive. The most transformative moment came when I was finally able to legally secure ownership of one of the houses. The feeling of victory wasn't just about real estate or finances, it was about regaining my dignity. For the first time, I felt that my efforts had real meaning, that my voice had been heard, and that my right to set boundaries was undeniable. This milestone cemented my confidence and gave me the courage to continue building my life based on principles of justice and respect, rather than silent sacrifices. After securing ownership of the house, something deep inside me shifted. I no longer felt that mixture of fear and guilt that had plagued me for years. Every challenge I faced, every difficult conversation, and every tear I shed had shaped me forever. I began to see my life from a new perspective, one of autonomy and self-respect. The emotional freedom I felt was transformative. I could finally breathe without feeling the weight of obligation imposed by others. Even with the victory, I realized that some of the pain still lingered. My relationship with Vinicius and my parents hadn't completely healed. Some hurts don't disappear overnight, but the crucial difference was that I now had a voice and clear boundaries. I no longer accepted being manipulated or belittled. Every time they tried to question my choices, I stood firm, demonstrating that overcoming adversity isn't just about reaching a goal, but about learning to remain emotionally whole and secure, even in the face of conflict. Over time, I began to notice changes in my own attitude. I began to value my efforts, recognize my achievements, and above all, respect myself like never before. The fear of confronting family members was replaced by the courage to live according to my own values. I understood that we don't need everyone's approval to be worthy of respect. What matters is the consistency between our actions and principles. Overcoming obstacles, I learned, comes with self-knowledge, firmness, and the ability to own our decisions without guilt. Today, I share this story with the online community because I know many people experience situations of family injustice, exploitation, and emotional manipulation. I want to show that despite everything, it's possible to bounce back. That it's possible to set boundaries, regain respect and dignity, even if your family isn't ready to accept it. It's not an easy journey, and there are still days of reflection and challenges, but the feeling of walking independently, knowing that each step is the result of courage and self-effort, is indescribably liberating. Ultimately, I learned that true overcoming isn't just about achieving material wealth or justice, but about building a safe emotional space based on clear boundaries, self-love, and courage. Today, I feel complete in a way I never knew before, aware of my worth, my choices, and the importance of living with dignity. Life can be unfair, but our response to it can transform pain into strength and betrayal into learning. This is my victory, my personal rebirth, and the certainty that I deserve respect and happiness. Even with the victory over the legal dispute, I realized that emotional reconstruction would be a long and delicate path. My relationship with Vinicius and my parents remained marked by resentment, silence, and disapproving looks, and some wounds seemed too deep to heal quickly. However, the crucial difference was that I now had internal tools to protect myself: clear boundaries, awareness of my worth, and the courage to resist pressure or manipulation. Each time I faced veiled criticism or attempts to belittle myself, I felt the silent strength of years of learning. I understood that overcoming doesn't mean erasing the pain, but walking with it consciously, maintaining integrity, autonomy, and inner peace. I clearly realized that my dignity doesn't depend on the recognition of others, but on the coherence between my choices, my principles, and my courage to confront them. Today, when I look back on this journey, I understand that true overcoming goes far beyond material gain or legal victory. It manifests itself in the ability to set firm boundaries without guilt, in the courage to face emotional manipulation, and in the maturity to recognize one's own worth in the face of unfair relationships. I feel emotionally reborn, building a safe and solid inner space where I can love and connect without losing my autonomy. I've learned that life can be cruel, but our response to it is transformative, and that pain, when faced with honesty and courage, can become fuel for growth, self-confidence, and dignity. Today, I walk with freedom, awareness, and self-respect, and this emotional achievement, more than any property or legal right, is the most profound and meaningful victory I've ever experienced.